Welcome, everyone. It's Andrew Beach, Executive Career Coach. I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate your value to find great opportunities faster. What is today? Today is Friday. What time is it? It's happy hour. It's happy hour somewhere. That's why we call this Career Happy Hour. Let me know in the chat if you're joining the live stream today that you are actually reading me loud and clear and can hear what's going on. That would be great. Let me know where you're joining from. Hey, Terry, good to see you. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hopefully you got good news, Terry. I'm hoping you got some good news. Maybe we could get you to come in here and give me some good news, because I could sure use some good news. Does anybody have any good news out there on Career Cocktail Hour? Yes, that's what today is. It's Career Happy Hour. That's where we meet every Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific time to help you with free career coaching. If you're struggling, like a lot of people are, to communicate your value, if you're struggling to get employers to notice you, if you're struggling with any component of your job search, that's why we're here. We're a community. It's not just me. There's plenty of folks in the chat that are offering their help. I want this to be a community, and most of the people who come here do as well. We look for and we encourage cross-pollination inside the chat. So if you would please, we got some folks from Michigan, San Diego, Los Angeles. Good. Cheers from PDX. Yes, that's where most of us are. I'm based in Portland, Oregon. I think Terry is too. Terry's here locally. So we have a lot of Portland connection. You know, it's when you look back at it, it's really fascinating to me how many people in the career job search space come out of Portland. There's a lot of folks, you can see them on LinkedIn Learning. Mac Pritchard, Cleon Cox. I mean, there's so many exceptional resources here in Portland. It always astonishes me that we have so many strong leaders and thought leaders in Portland around career. So hopefully I can add and do them justice and provide some of the perspective that we need to get through today's situation. Good. Welcome, Chelsea. Good to have you back. Good to have you back. What I wanted to talk about today was, it's interesting how LinkedIn has evolved over the years. It's funny because I used to get notification emails from LinkedIn when I first started back in probably 2004. I got on LinkedIn. And I remember some of the email notifications that we used to get through the platform. By the way, let me know where you're joining from, and look at the little share button wherever you're joining from, and let me know that you shared this out with your network so that we can get more people involved. Let them know that this free resource exists. And I will put the link to that in the chat. If anybody wants to come on live, they're welcome to do so. I think it's in the description as well for whatever platform you're on. We're on Facebook, Periscope, LinkedIn, and also YouTube. So all the videos are certainly archived on YouTube. If you want to go watch them there, that's fine. I don't know. I'm kind of in the habit of watching things at 2x speed. So if that's you and you feel like I'm talking too fast, you can always slow me down. For those of you who appreciate the 2x speed and want to hear me a little faster, you can do that too. Those that are glutton for punishment. So let me get over here to LinkedIn and get into notifications, into the chat so I can share that. Let me mute this so we don't end up getting some audio come across that's not supposed to be there. So good. There's some folks from Louisiana. Louisiana, welcome. Wherever you're joining from, there's a little share button down below. I would encourage you to share that to your favorite network and get people involved in today's session. And I'm here to answer your questions. So if you have questions about career, networking, interviewing, market planning, personal branding, whatever revolves around those topics, put those in the chat and we'll answer them today. More folks from Seattle, good to have you. Thank you for being here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the evolution of LinkedIn and where it's come from. When it first started, LinkedIn in 2004 was founded on a premise. And that premise was people that can recommend each other. That's really what it was. So Reed and some of his friends, they got together and decided, hey, we need a system or a way, a technology where people can refer each other and vouch for each other. That's really how it started. Now, in the early days, as I recall, you had to have an email for everybody you connected to. And that became problematic. So there was an evolution that said, well, we need to create a way that people can connect with each other when they don't have their email. And that bore websites that were created by people to become Lions. Now, Lions are LinkedIn Open Networkers. So if you've never heard that term before, LinkedIn Open Network Lion is something that was founded so that people could interact with each other, get the email, and actually connect on LinkedIn. Some of the notification emails I had were really fascinating because you could see, for example, Terry's in the chat. If Terry connected to somebody else, I got an email that said, hey, Terry connected to this person over here. And that was really helpful because then I could go look at new people's profiles, because truthfully, the search function inside LinkedIn wasn't very sophisticated. Let's just put it that way. Everything was really done through notification emails. It's come a long way. And you can see the history of what LinkedIn has done is they gave so much availability to people, and they got addicted to the service, and then they'd pull that back behind a firewall and ask you to pay for it, which makes sense. I don't suspect that they should be a nonprofit ministry, but they should certainly earn some money. Let's just put it that way. Now, the value in LinkedIn certainly isn't your profile page. It's your capacity to see other profile pages. And the way that it's looked now in the last 24 hours, I don't know if you noticed, but they just redid their whole user interface. And so we can go in and talk about that. But I like to have some sort of topic to start things off today. And that's what I have on my mind. So let's see. Oh, well, actually, it's funny. This is a great question from Vadehi. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad. Is how do I stay motivated for a search without feeling drained? That was actually the topic of last week's stream. So if you go back and look at last week's stream, what was that, 23rd, I think it is. I have to go back and look at my calendar. I was good at math, but I wasn't great. So if you look at last week's stream, I guess that was the 18th, the 18th. That was our topic of conversation. And I actually shared a post on my feed just the other day that was my response to the question that was posted by the LinkedIn editorial staff. And that was, how do you stay motivated? And the first thing I said is, actually, I could probably pull up that post. Maybe let's do that old school here, shall we? Let's go to my activities, and I'll pull up that post right now, and we can take a PC. See if it's in here. Where is it? Actually, I probably need to see my post. If you have any questions, go ahead and put that in the chat. Happy to answer your questions. Oh, there was also an interesting thing about out migration. Here it is. So how can I do this? Let me move this over here. I'll share my screen with y'all. And it talks about resilience. So let's hide this message. I'll try sharing my screen. I tried this once before and it worked out okay, right? And then I'll put myself, let's see, and we're going to spotlight this one. How does that work? Did that work? I didn't disappear. Good. I'm a little square in the bottom. So to answer your question about how do you stay motivated for a search, it's resilience. Resilience is key to any search, not just during the pandemic. The mindset of a job seeker has to maintain is critically important. The games are won and lost by 6 inches. The 6 inches between your ears. And first, you have to believe there's a place for you. You have to believe that some company somewhere has a spot for you and your strengths and everything you're good at. If you don't believe that, then you're working from a position of weakness. I don't agree with that. I believe you should work from a position of strength and own it. Own it that you're the right candidate for a particular job. Second, give yourself a break. I mean, there's only so much 24/7, 365 job search you can actually do without breaking down or burning out. Schedule regular times to get away. Now, that could be just a mental getaway, a mental break. A diversion. There are plenty useful diversions. Now, not for too long, right? We don't want to use that as an excuse not to do job search or not to network with people. But yeah, if you're going 24/7 for a period of time and you're feeling like resilience is running short, then take a break. Absolutely. Something to expel your stress. Do some push-ups. Run around the block. Dance in the rain. Turn on the sprinklers in the middle of winter. I mean, I don't know. Do something. Do something that's interesting, fun, and unusual. Unusual. Sometimes that'll kind of break a pattern. Sometimes we're just interested in breaking patterns of monotony. The other thing is regularly talk to people with a pulse. That's what this group exists for. So I've seen it before. There's people that have connected here and actually gone and had conversations with each other. Can you imagine what that was like? Actually reaching out to people and having conversations. And that's why this group exists, is I want it to be a community where people reach out to each other and connect. If you're in the chat and you can see other people, put your LinkedIn profile address in there, okay? The challenge with the chat and people attending is you're virtually anonymous. You're until you post something in the chat, nobody knows you're here, okay? So if that's you, leave something in the chat. Put your LinkedIn profile address there so people can connect with each other. Please, I implore you, talk to real people who have a pulse. Now, sometimes it's less about you getting something out of it and more about you giving. In fact, one of the better books that I've read on that particular subject is Giver's Gain. It was actually written by a gentleman who started BNI, the Business Network International. And it talks about how people who give actually gain. Go figure. If you want to read more about that, I'm sure you could find copies of that on Amazon. I'm not here to promote that service or to advocate a book, but Giver's Gain, the concept is pretty common. It's pretty commonsensical. Is that sometimes you're having conversations with that person that has a pulse, and you make a contribution, and you get a shot of dopamine, and that's healthy for you. Dedicate time. So fourth is dedicate time to sharpening your saw. Here's the thing: is there's always something you can do to get better. And if you don't think you have room to grow, then there may not be hope for any of us. But I believe that everybody has the capacity to grow in some way, whether that's their speaking skills, their networking skills. Do something to sharpen your saw around job search or your domain. I think that's critically important to keeping you engaged in expanding your mind and your focus. The last one is, and this is kind of more related to the hand-to-hand combat that is job search, is that it should be focused on interviews. Any activity that you are participating in ought to lead to an interview. Otherwise, you have to question whether or not it's valuable to be participating in. Now, we're talking about job search. We're not talking about the breaks or the things you do on the side or sharpening the saw. There's a certain portion of your time that you're probably in the job search mode, and that ought to be focused on interviews. Now, sometimes we think, oh, it has to be a job interview. No, it just has to be a conversation with a person who's in the position of power to potentially hire you. That's an interview. A lot of networking actually is interviewing. It's interview prep. Actually, if you think about it, if you're worried about interviews and being prepared for those, do more networking. That's one of the best ways to engage in a process for improved communications is through the networking. Okay. Know the best ways for you to get interviews, because everybody is going to be different. Some people can get, 2 interviews out of 5 applications online. Great. Keep doing that. Many people, especially as you get higher in the organization, you could put out 10 applications and not get crickets. So I don't know what your experience has been, but let me know in the chat. I appreciate that. If you could give me some insights on whether or not you're seeing any kind of, what is the number one method for you to get to interviews that you've been tracking? Maybe that's more critical to understand here from your perspective. So we can go through some of these other things here. There's a new look and feel for LinkedIn. I don't know if you're aware. Maybe you saw when you logged into LinkedIn, it looks a little different. This was all fueled by their presentation last year, 2019, at their Connect conference. They were talking about inclusion and helping other people. and connecting. So that it was really valuable for me to see that they've actually executed on these things. So since their last major redesign was 5 years ago, and people just about flipped their lid when this happened. They were like, "Oh, it's terrible. Oh, it's awful." Well, actually, it's really standardized the profile. Before, the profile wasn't very standardized. And so now it's really nice. It's kind of in a clean format. People can get through the profile without being clouded up with a lot of text and things that are distracting. So yeah, part of this is making it cleaner. Now, it would be nice, by the way, if they had some kind of a dark background. I do like the dark because, you're staring at a white screen all day. It's not very, very good for your eyes. So, that would be nice. So that's what's going on. I'm not going to, let me see. How do I get rid of this thing now? There we go. Okay. Good. So if there's any questions, good. I see people putting their profile links in the chat. I appreciate that. Thank you. Let me close out some of these windows. It looks like I'm having some latency issues. If you're seeing and hearing me okay, just let me know. I'd appreciate that. I'll stop sharing. There we go. Well, I'm going to grab Terry here, and maybe Terry's ready to add some value. I had a couple of conversations from this group and have one more upcoming. Good. So Terry, thank you for actually taking the advice and using it. That shows me honor and respect, and it makes me more likely to help someone like you. So I appreciate that. Joining from Seattle. Okay, good. So if you have any questions, go ahead and come on. Happy to let this go. I would like to just get some good news. So let's get Terry up in here. Terry.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, not too bad. How are you?
I'm good. Black.
Good.
I didn't know black was the uniform today.
Well, I just took off my black hoodie too, so.
Yeah. What's on your mind? What question do you have for me? Observations, contributions.
Not so much a question, but I do want to follow up on what you've been talking about as far as, connecting with the folks in this group. I mean, it's really valuable, I think. And like I said, I've had a couple of good conversations with people in the last couple of weeks. I've got one or two more coming up next week. One that I'm really intrigued about because of where the person that I'm talking to works. And I'm looking for some insights onto her work environment, so to speak. So, should be interesting. I do have a bit of good news, I guess. I've got a colleague in the Seattle area who is right on the verge of launching a set of products and really wants me to talk with him about a role I could play in that product launch that would play to my strengths and some of my passions around talent management and particularly leadership coaching and leadership development. So this kind of came out of the blue. It's a direct response to some of the networking. So just to let people know who haven't been on the conversation before. So I spent about a month just going through my primary contacts on LinkedIn and just reaching out to people again, some of whom I hadn't talked to in, unfortunately, years. This guy kind of fits into that category. And it was sort of a lo and behold kind of thing. And so we've had now 3 different conversations around, what this thing could look like and so forth. And so he's off next week, and then the week after we're going to connect again. But there's a real possibility there. So it looks, it's not very traditional, but it is definitely intriguing. So that to say, and just by way of an additional note, at least one other very recent outreach through that same mechanism, through that first line of contact, resulted in an interview for 2 different opportunities that occurred earlier this week. So all that to say, one, I really encourage people, and I'm certainly happy to chat with anybody that wants to from this group. And 2, networking helps. Networking is definitely a cool gig. I've applied for any of a number of positions, online. Now, in fairness, I've gotten interviews through that process. I just haven't gotten to the finish line on any of those interviews yet. Mm-hmm. And again, because it's just a very competitive landscape, and so on. Not that I'm not competitive, but just it's very competitive right now, and I think everybody knows that. So, and the interesting thing too about that is, and there was a discussion about this in a different forum, I think recently, about ghosting and being ghosted. And there's a lot of that going on right now too, for a variety of reasons. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I feel like there's some good news happening.
Well, good. I mean, are you feeling that the momentum has come from these conversations? Have you built momentum from the conversations?
I think so. I think so, to some extent, yeah. The momentum, yeah. It's for me anyway. It's a numbers game. The more conversations you can have, the more opportunities that may come to surface. I had a fantastic conversation Wednesday, with someone from Toronto that has led to another conversation coming on Monday from somebody in Vancouver, British Columbia. And that in turn, I don't know where that one will go, but the one on Wednesday led to some very interesting conversations yesterday and today. So, the value is just, particularly in this isolated world we live in right now, just having the conversation, just getting in touch with people really can. And you're right. Sometimes it's an interview, sometimes it's not an interview, but one thing can lead to another.
Yes.
So,
and each of those conversations is interview prep.
Right. Exactly.
And if you thought that maybe, okay, I applied to these jobs, I got to an interview, but I didn't get to the finish line. Maybe that was your performance. And if you do an after action review, it could have been a fit issue. I get all that. Right. Yeah. But it also could have been your performance at the interview that was deficient. And now you've done a lot of reps, talking to people, and you'll have a lot more confidence going into the interview that your stories are kind of down, and you can now, pay attention to the people across from you to the point where you can actually see how they're responding to what you're saying. Are they looking off in the distance? Are they checking their watch? Are they fading away, or are they actually engaged in the dialogue?
Right.
So that I think is really critical, is that people think networking is this big thing, right? And sometimes it's a casual conversation that leads to this great opportunity in Vancouver. That, and just because you said yes to a conversation, that happened. And I suppose for those who have always had jobs, right, and always had people come to them with jobs and never had to look for jobs, that should be reassuring that people are going to say yes.
Yeah, I think so. And, I definitely fall into that category. I mean, my career has been built on people coming to me, and it's been, literally since well back in the 20th century that's been the case. Right. And so.
Is that how long you've been around?
Yep. Me and Methuselah. Me and Methuselah, man. We hang out. I'm older than Neil Young.
Yeah. Good.
Not really, but no, but that's been my pattern. The only time I really looked hard for a job was when I relocated from California to here. And by the way, just in case anybody's curious, I'm from here originally. Just get that on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for those who don't know, Portland is pretty provincial. And
yes.
So people who are not from here are outsiders. And I came from California back in the 70s, albeit, but it took several years, maybe even several decades before people would call me a local. Right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you hit during a particular time. There's a conversation we could have offline, but there was a particular energy around that, that movement from California to Portland or to Oregon that was being driven out of the governor's office. But that's another story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very provincial. It can be very provincial. But my point there being simply, I made a conscious decision to come home for personal reasons, and went through the process, and that was in the 20th century.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
So here's something that's kind of been on my mind recently is the strength of your close at an interview. And some people are really concerned or they don't feel confident enough to actually say something about themselves at the end of an interview to demonstrate their interest. And so it's interesting that this question or this observation came up by Chelsea in the chat, that there's situations that she has an interview, maybe with a recruiter, maybe with a hiring manager, and nothing happens, right?
Cool.
And certainly there's blame on both sides. I don't doubt that for a moment, that not every talent acquisition team is perfect, and not every person on that team is perfect in every candidate interaction. So I'm going to give each side a little bit of grace there. But what would you say is a good way for a candidate? Because as candidates, all you have to control is yourself and your own actions. But how could a candidate close out an interview and know what the next step is, when and how that's going to happen? And are there certain, the way I'm thinking right now from your perspective, Terry, are there certain milestones in the hiring of a person that are generally happening with every hire that would be appropriate next steps to presume in a hiring process? Like, hey, phone screen, what's the outcome of that one?
Mm-hmm.
Hiring team interview, or
Yeah.
peer, or hiring manager. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a one-on-one with a peer. Is it now hiring team? Is it a panel? Is it,
Yeah.
Can we start making some presumptions and assume, in sales, they call it assume the sale, right? I assume I'm moving forward in a process. And so if I start from that perspective, how can I close out, say, a phone screen and know exactly what the next step is and when and how that's going to happen? Because a lot of our candidates, at least when I'm hearing, we'll get back to you.
Well,
and we can discuss whether or not that's a good response from a talent acquisition person, but I want to get your perspective, so I'll shut up now.
Well, first of all, I don't approve. I mean, so just to fill in the blank, so I've run talent teams for years, and recruiting teams and staffing teams and so on, and I've got some particulars about that. That's a particular for me. If my folks are on the phone talking to people, I want them to be very clear that if there is going to be a next step, this is what it looks like. Okay. And from a candidate perspective, it's absolutely okay to ask the question. And that's not, and it's a very reasonable way to round out an interview, to simply say, this has been great. I really appreciate the opportunity that I've had to talk with you today. What's the next step, and when does that happen? It's a very legitimate question, and it is not presumptuous. There are no good recruiters that won't answer that question, right? In some way, right? And if they say, well, we'll have to see what happens, or we'll get back with you, or what have you. Okay, well, that's nice, but I've got a lot of things going on. When could I expect that to happen? It's very, very reasonable question, not presumptuous. And then you get to decide, the credibility of the person based on action relative to words.
Okay. So do you think it's effective specifically with talent acquisition to say, hey, I feel like I'm a good fit for this role. I want to move forward in the hiring process. What is the next step to make me your next great hire, or make me your, for me to come on board? What sort of language do you think would land well there?
Yeah, that's a great nuance. I think it's entirely fair to say, I'm really impressed with what I've heard. It aligns with who I think I am and what I can bring, which is a ton of value. And I'd like to be able to, one, talk more about that, and two, demonstrate it to you as a new employee.
Okay. Good. That's good. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Because you're taking that from a recruiter perspective, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Value and demonstration and continued interview, right? Continue this interview process, please. Yes. Okay. Good. Now, you've also been a hiring manager. So from a hiring manager perspective, what would you anticipate that, okay, let's say I've done the phone screen. I don't know if there's a panel or however many people involved. Maybe there's a loop. But at what point can you presume that you're going to be moving forward in a hiring process, and maybe pretty close to an offer? I mean, what sort of indicators do you typically see happening there?
As a hiring manager?
Yeah, from a hiring manager's perspective.
That's a good question. That's my standard stalling for time answer. Hey, that's a really good question.
Well, so I guess I look at it from this perspective outside of talent management, HR talent acquisition, is that I'm thinking like a hiring manager, and I'm thinking, oh, well, there's probably like background checks going on, and I don't know if somebody needs a visa or something. There's all these operational things that I have to think about as a hiring manager that I don't want to think about, but I have to. And ask a hiring manager, I think that would be a little bit easier than asking the talent folks because they haven't gotten a decision yet. So I don't know. I just have to presume that there's a series of steps in the process called hiring that are going to happen in a logical order based on the company and their policy.
And they're fairly standard. Well, I shouldn't say that. They aren't really that standard, but they're fairly easy to spell out. I mean, typically there's some kind of screening activity, and again, I can't stand that word, but I'll use it for the moment. That leads to a slate of candidates that, some person, either the talent acquisition person, or depending on how the thing is structured, maybe a member of the actual working team, or potentially even the hiring manager themselves, depending on, their own personal perspectives, will go through and they'll talk to X number of candidates based on the process that they've used to get to that X number. And then from that, they will call some, most, or all, depending on the situation, of those individuals into a next round, which would most likely be, and this is a kind of a key phrase, stakeholders. Not only other people on the team, but people who in the organization would interact with that position on the team and who have a vested interest in the quality and impact of the hire. So, if the hiring authorities have done a good job in this process ahead of time, they've organized that into a pattern so that, it's screen, first round, second round. Depending on the level of the position, it may require a third round, or depending on the skills required, may require a third round. But in any case, then once those rounds are completed, and believe me, if it goes beyond 3, it's gone too far. Another story entirely. Then it's a matter that the hiring authority, the manager and the folks that have been in the interview process, sit down and do their analysis and say, okay, here's who the most likely person is. Here's who we like the best. Here's who we think is going to do the best job, et cetera. Right. And then from there, most typically what should happen is that the talent team, the talent person, is reaching out to the people who didn't make that cut and telling them and saying, hey, doesn't look like we're going anywhere on this particular position. However, we love you. We think you're great. Don't lose hope on us as an organization. In the parallel path, they're reaching out to the number one person and they're saying, okay, number one person, things look really good. The interviews are very positive. We're moving forward. Now we would like to get to the process of reference checking. We want to talk to the people that you want us to talk to about who you are and what you do. Okay. That is usually a really good indicator. I mean, if you get that call, that's a really good indicator that you're on the right path.
Okay. Yeah. So what you're saying is I could presume maybe if I've gone far enough in a hiring process, I could presume that the next step is reference check, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if I, as a candidate, came in and I got to the end of this, I say I'm an ideal candidate, I'm going to say, hey, I believe I'm an ideal candidate. And I think the next step is probably a reference check. Is that something you guys do here? And should I forward you that information, or do you need my references? Or, I mean, is it,
yeah, if you
sometimes, as you probably know, Terry, there's varying degrees of competence in every profession.
Yes.
And one thing, I can help people prepare for interviews, right? But I can't help people prepare for in how should I say it? The bottom 25% in the talent acquisition profession, right? So that part is, hey, we have to recognize that as a candidate, we need to kind of push this thing along, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's very fair. In fact, I had a conversation not too long ago with somebody on this exact topic, and it was, okay, what do I say? And my recommendation is if you've reached that far, if you've gone through a couple of rounds, it's entirely fair to circle back with the talent acquisition person who's been sort of orchestrating all this and just say, okay, so I've been through a couple of rounds. I think it went great. It sounds like it went great. I have some references I'd like to give you. I have some people I would like you to talk to about me. Can I do that? Are we ready? And then talent acquisition person says, well, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Oh boy. And so they probably don't know the conversations or they're working lots of requisitions and I can imagine that they would respond positively to that because they get to place somebody.
Yeah.
Nothing worse, I suppose, than a never ending requisition, it takes forever to get filled or never gets filled. So,
yeah.
Good. So here's another one for Chelsea is always so good with the questions. I have to give her a lot of kudos. So we actually had some really good insights on Amazon this last week.
Mm-hmm.
And so Chelsea says, I had an Amazon recruiter find me for a job that is right up my alley, but in reality, what % do we think we really, oops, it just went away. I'm sorry. What % do we really think we have in getting a job at such a competitive company? And so it's a great question. I've worked with a lot of people that have been placed at Amazon recently, and many of them, what they said to me was, you're not competing with other people. You're competing against an ideal, a standard, and that is the leadership principles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you would be surprised how many people Amazon does not hire. And it has less to do with the competitive landscape and more to do with their alignment with their leadership principles.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer to that, Chelsea, is know the leadership principles and see how you align with them and create stories, anecdotal evidence of success for each of the leadership principles, probably a couple of stories for each one, and practice those things like crazy. So if Amazon's reaching out to you, there's a reason. They're actually recruiting people, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And you will find that the process there is very clear. If they want you to go forward, you will.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take very long. It's not something that, at least the people that I've interacted with that got hired at Amazon, it was 45 days. I mean, it was not very long. Of course, depending on the level, there's a lot of variables, but
Sure.
Most of the people I know get hired there pretty quickly. The ones that do. The ones that don't, they know right away, hey, you know what? You did not do well in that interview, or the interview wasn't a fit. That happens a lot too. Sometimes they'll interview people because they think they're good, and then they'll recognize, oh, you'd be a better fit in this other org. So, yeah, I would go for it.
Yeah, by all means, especially given that the Amazon recruiter reached out to you. I mean, that's a huge part of the battle right there.
Let's see. Looks like we have some. Gazwan has given us some insights. It's rare that interviewers would truly answer when a candidate should hear back. That's interesting. If does hear back at all. That's why I follow up through email, but after the first interview screening, I'd move on to the next opportunity immediately. I find it a waste of time to count on something that's completely put out of my control. Of course, that's after being well prepped for an interview and follow-up. I guess what I'm trying to say is even big name companies don't have a good system. It is a system, so it's subject to people, and people make mistakes. To give closure to candidates or have a proper follow-ups. Yeah, so I mean that probably falls under the category of ghosting. But ghosting to me isn't just, hey, no follow-up. It's, hey, we like you, we've interviewed you, it's kind of like, hey, I like what I see here, and then nothing, radio silence. So that to me is a little bit different. Your thoughts, Terry? No thoughts?
I can't really think of anything that I would add to what you just said. I mean, I think you hit it pretty well. Yeah.
Let's see. Bogus. Okay. Thoughts on others here? Okay, so the question, Chelsea, keeps coming with the good questions. Yesterday, someone was mentioning all the several ways of making money online. I tend to stay away from bogus work, but what are your thoughts and others on here? I mean, there's no lack of ways to make an income. That's what I'll say about that. I would never pay to make income. That's starting a business. If I was going to do that, I'd probably go a different direction. But, I would never pay to have a job either, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. That's, There's plenty of intriguing scams out there too. That's the hard part of it.
Yeah. Amazon Fulfillment Center, the hiring is immediate need. It all depends on positions. Yeah. So Amazon had their career day, I think last week or week before. And so they're probably going through a glut of people trying to get them into a process or onboarded. But yeah, we're going into the holidays, and it appears that none of us are going to be going to the store to buy things. So I can imagine that Amazon is going to see a dramatic increase in sales.
Yeah,
probably 15-20%. Just positioned well. Wouldn't surprise me if they're part of the pandemic coming around. Anyway, let's see. Huge help on the Amazon reply feedback. Yeah, on my profile, actually, Chelsea, is an article written by a former Amazon hiring manager that they use in their hiring packet. It's an article on LinkedIn that talks about the leadership principles and the interview process. It's actually pretty complete and really good. Story, yes, yep, absolutely. Non-fulfillment role, PM role, good. Awesome. Anybody else want to come on live? You're welcome to do so. Terry and I are here to answer your questions. Terry, if you have places to go, I understand.
No, I'm good.
I mean, good. So Terry, you've seen the new LinkedIn interface. Is that, you like it? Is it clean? It's definitely cleaner to me.
Yeah, it's clean. I'm kind of like you. I like the contrast in colors. It seems a little bland now, and I've always been kind of a fan of having having some contrasting color, having some just a little bit more of a look to it. It looks like it feels kind of flat.
Yeah, well,
that's just me.
Yeah, I also got a message from their blog. It looks like yesterday. There's new features in LinkedIn messaging. So it looks like they're allowing the creation of a Zoom or Microsoft Teams meetings to be scheduled in a group chat or in a message. So that's really cool. Whether it's an existing conversation or you're starting a new one, click on the video icon next to where you type a message. From there, you'll see a pop-up where you can choose from Teams, Zoom, or Blue Jeans and prompt a sign-in. It's interesting how Microsoft and LinkedIn are integrating these different technologies without prioritizing their own. They're making the most prevalent ones available. So I noticed that Google Hangouts or Google Meet wasn't in there, but anyway,
that's not too surprising.
Yeah,
but now, I like Joe's comment that it looks like Facebook now. They look so much alike.
Well, but at least with Facebook, you can do the dark,
true,
the night theme, and that's what I use because there's only so much white pixel I can take in my face, exactly. and that's why I have the blue blocker glasses on most of the time. So,
well, have they done anything to improve the character count in invitations to connect? That just makes me crazy.
No, I think that's still there. So so it's still 300 characters. What they did do is they did expand the headline. They added an additional 100 characters in the headline. So it's now, instead of 120, it's 220. So you can put more stuff there, more brand. I think that's what's happening. People were putting some of their keywords in there, and it's like, oh, how do I share my brand now that I've got my keywords in there? But now it can be a little more There's a lot more space there. And then they expanded the about section to 2,600 characters.
Yeah, I noticed that. That's cool.
Yeah, so that gives you a lot more space to tell your story and to use white space and to make it actually consumable rather than trying to stuff everything in there. But
the thing that's frustrating is that white space counts as characters.
Yeah, well, that's why they added additional, I think, is because, hey, and you know, funny that this company owned by Microsoft doesn't have any kind of way to edit rich text on any of their sections. So
interesting, huh?
It's the type of thing where you have to use some third-party thing. It's almost like an emoji, then it doesn't show up as even a character. So it's a picture. Anyway, but the thing about do you have premium service, Terry? I didn't look that up. Okay. So one of the things to think about is if you have premium service, you can turn on what's called open profile. And open profile allows people to send you InMail without being connected. And I think that's super valuable. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Okay. So I can show you how to do that. Let me do that real quick. See if we can make it happen, Cap'n.
Right on.
All right. I'm going to focus on this one. There we go. Good. Hey, we're both at the bottom of the screen. This is too cool.
This is awesome.
Okay, so if I go to my profile, I've got premium as well. And then if I edit the intro section here, what you'll see, it's right here actually, which is weird. I don't know why. It's probably because I make things bigger so people can actually see it.
Yeah.
So there's typically a little icon right here that talks about your premium badge and all that. But right now, that's funny. My premium profile badge is off and people can't send me InMail. So I'm going to turn on open profile and add my badge. There we go. Save. Okay. Now the badge is back. And if somebody who's not connected to me comes here, they can send me an InMail. So let's look at Kelsey. Let's see what happens when I send her a message. Now it forces me to use an InMail. Let's pick somebody else. You'll see down at the bottom, this is why this is important. No, that's forcing me to use it too. Come on, somebody. Somebody make it good. No, wow. Maybe I'm just I'm just pulling up there we go. Okay. So now that I have open profile on, you'll see down here, free message. Okay. Down at the bottom. You see that? Or is well, how about that?
Hang on.
Your image is in front of it. So let me turn you off really quick. Sorry, Terry. So you'll see here down at the bottom, free message. Okay. Versus if I go back to the last person that we were just at and I click the message button, it'll say, hey, you got to use one of your InMails or it forces you to sign up. Okay. So I think that's valuable. So if you're looking at, Terry, being limited by the number of characters in a connect request, you can always find people with premium service that have that open profile turned on, and you can send them an InMail without using your own. So that's why, even though I've got 45 InMails, I've only used 2 of them in the last month.
Yeah.
Why?
Wow.
Because I send people who have it turned on InMails, and I don't have to use mine. So that's
very cool.
Yeah, something to think about there.
Yeah, for sure. Very useful.
Yes, sir. So what's up? Let's see. What makes a great or proper background image behind your profile pic? I had one, and when they updated, it went away. So what is another good one while we're searching for it? So the idea, actually, thank you, Chelsea, for that question. The idea behind the background image is to support your brand. So the question for you is, what's your brand? And many people think you should stuff like a word cloud up there or something of that nature. I think it's okay to use a little bit of text and an image. It doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, I think I did YouTube. If you go to my YouTube channel, I did a YouTube channel, a YouTube video on how to create a background image using canva.com. And I'll see if I can put that Canva in the chat for everybody. Well, that didn't work out.
Guy Kawasaki works for them.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
How did you know that? Do you know Guy?
Huh?
Do you know him?
Yeah.
You do?
It's been like 20 plus, but yeah, I first met him when he was still an evangelist at Apple.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
He's an interesting character.
Very connected guy, everybody.
He pushes the envelope a lot.
Does he? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll close this out. I'll put it in the chat here on the live stream, and then I'll come over to LinkedIn. And let's see, add it to the live stream here. Any other questions you're seeing there? Did Joe make? Oh, Joe did. Yeah. Now they have stories too. Well, I don't see the stories. I don't know if anybody else has them.
I don't either.
But I don't see them. So I don't have them on my mobile device yet. But it isn't surprising that, there we go. I put the video in the chat so everybody can have it. It's how to use Canva to create a background image. So I think it's really helpful. It's super easy to do. When you look at how to do it, it's not complicated. So if that's you, go for it. Any other questions out there? Terry and I are here to answer your questions, or if you want to come on live, you can get free coaching from both of us, maybe. Double time. So
I noticed that Craig Clark did not show up today, or at least I haven't seen or heard from him yet.
Okay.
I think we gave him a little more than he bargained for last week.
Is that right?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, so sometimes, being a coach, and you can probably relate to this, Terry, is sometimes people need, they just need an ear. They just need somebody to listen.
Yeah.
Other people need affirmation, right? You're doing great. It's going to be okay. Encouragement, that sort of thing. Other people, they just need a kick in the ass. You know what I mean? They need someone to just shake them and say, hey, let's pull our big boy and girl pants on and let's go to work. Right.
Yeah.
And each is valid. It's just really hard sometimes to read people when you're talking about a live stream on LinkedIn. How do I handle that?
Yeah.
But good. Okay, so here's a good one. Chelsea, again, we should put her on the payroll.
Right.
Anyway. Is Apple hiring for full-time salary work right now? Yes. I don't think to look for obvious reasons, but I wonder if they are like Nike when they were laying off a ton of people. You're reading the news. People are interviewing at Nike right now and getting hired.
Yeah.
Why? Because they have skill sets that Nike needs for the reorganization.
Yes.
So the reason they're laying off isn't, in fact, I think they just announced they beat the street last week. So I can't imagine it's a financial thing. It's probably more having to do with a reorganization.
Yeah.
So we can't just listen to the news. We have to interact with people on the inside of the company to find the opportunity.
Yeah.
So what
words to live by.
Right. Well, the philosophy then is, okay, well, everybody's hiring. Every company's hiring. It's just a matter that they're not advertising or they don't have an opening for you or whatever, but they're all hiring. Otherwise, I mean, what would happen to an organization, Terry? Let's do a what if here, shall we?
Sure.
What if an organization decided never to hire any more people? What would happen?
Well, for one thing, they would stop growing. For another thing, chances are they, the business, whatever their business model is, would be eclipsed almost immediately by their competition because the competition is interested in growing. And so they would spiral downwards, probably fairly rapidly. Just, depending on the circumstances. I mean, we've seen all kinds of examples of companies that suspend hiring or doing hiring freezes for, a month or a quarter, or, but the interesting thing about that is I think about my experiences going back a long time around companies doing that is that companies that engage very long-term hiring freezes, I've seen this happen, don't last. They go away because they have screwed something up badly.
Yeah. So the number one is all companies are hiring, right? Good or bad, whatever you hear in the media, they're always hiring, right? Everybody's hiring. Yeah. The second one is we're looking for the exception to the rule, not the rule.
Right.
And there's always an exception to the rule. And so if the rule is hiring freeze, guess what? There's always an exception.
Oh, yeah.
There's always somebody getting hired, even during a hiring freeze. It might be an internal hire. It might be a contractor. It might be There's always somebody in the mix, even during a hiring freeze. There's just a process to get those people approved,
right,
and onboarded.
No, I can cite a very specific example of a company I worked for that was based out of upstate New York that, continually said, well, we're not hiring. We're holding on hiring. We're hiring freeze, keeping it cool. And the guy who was the VP of staffing, we'd have our annual, meet, all the HR heads from all over the company would get together, and he'd stand up in front of the group and said, we're not hiring this year. We have a hiring freeze. And look at this number. It was typically 100 plus hires.
During a hiring freeze.
Yeah, during the freeze. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do as I say, not as I do kind of thing, right? Anyway, it's funny. So Teresa's got a question. Thank you, Teresa. Welcome. Please come again. Would you recommend that if a company is not hiring to submit your resume to them anyway? Well, I have a different perspective on resume than most people. I believe it's a filtering mechanism that's designed to filter you into or out of a hiring process.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And which stack is bigger, the people filtered in or the people filtered out? That's the frustrating part about resume. If we're just relying on our resume to do the speaking for us, we're at a disadvantage.
Correct.
Which means, what is the best known method for getting into any company? I'll leave that for discussion. Anybody? Terry, you're here. What is the best known method for finding opportunities inside a company?
Getting to know the people inside the organization that can connect you to those opportunities. Utilizing your network to connect.
And have a conversation.
Have a conversation.
Here's the cool part. Doesn't require a resume. Right?
No.
Open hands. Nothing up my sleeve, right?
Presto.
Yeah. I'm not going to pull a resume out of my sleeve and say, hey, I know I was here for a network meeting. Don't you have a job for me?
Just so happens I have one.
It's not a bait and switch, right? So it's reaching out to people you know first, because I think that's the easiest place to start.
Yeah.
Great place to practice, especially if you've never done the networking thing before, and then get to the people you don't know second.
Yeah.
So that would be the best known methods, whether it's Amazon, Apple, the U.S. government. You just go down the list. Any company is this way. So good. Thank you. Oswaldo got it. It took us a little while to see that in the chat. So good. Good question. Doesn't hurt, right? Yeah. I mean, a company having your resume doesn't hurt. The question you have to ask, does it help? And if you put it in there expecting to cross your fingers and get a response, you might be waiting for a long time.
Yeah.
So I would say that's a very minimal standard. It's too easy to send a resume or make an application. What's hard? Hard is connecting with a person,
right,
who's got a pulse and is a position of power to hire people. That's hard. Mm-hmm. Why do you think nobody does networking? Because it's hard. I don't like to say it is simple, but it isn't easy.
Right.
It's hard, and if you feel rejection from just getting people say no on an application resume, oh boy, wait till you start networking. You'll get a lot of rejection really fast.
Yeah, you'll learn that one.
Just get it out of the way.
Right.
Good. Networking and find someone within the company. Yes. Thank you, Teresa. Validation. Here's a good one. Oh boy, I can't say it. VC. Anyway, I think the key is maybe we have to see positions right now, but always keep an eye consistently. Yes, because who's looking out for your career? Is Terry? Am I looking out for your career? No. You're looking out for your career. That's why I always recommend, hey, let's even when you're working, put a little calendar reminder in there that says, hey, I'm going to visit my resume, my LinkedIn profile, and my maybe a marketing plan or some sort of career map once a quarter. Once a quarter, I'm going to schedule time with myself to talk to me about my career. Okay. So that I can then map a way to get where I want to go, and that I'm not at the whim of somebody else's reduction in force or pandemic. I'm helping myself that way. Observations there, Terry.
Agree. And that's hard because, you get into the battle, you have your job, you have your work, and all that. And then you go home and you have your family and your situation there and all that. And, we're geared to be productive. And, that's just the way our society has wired our thinking over the last multiple decades. And that doesn't necessarily always translate, being productive and taking time to really think about your career. It's a minority of people that take that as an opportunity and do it regularly, because we're not conditioned for that. So,
well, and some of us like to see connection, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they like to see an outcome to an effort.
Right.
And the challenge with networking is the outcome to the effort isn't a job. And that's a paradox. The outcome to the effort is a relationship.
Right.
The relationship leads to a job, potentially. And if we focus on job as a foundation for a relationship, it's not going to be a relationship. It's going to be a transaction.
Right.
And that's not a way to build trust with people. Good. So here's one again from Gazwan. Would it be a good idea to take an opportunity at a big name company temporarily over long-term employment in mid-sized one? Thoughts, Terry?
Well,
I know my perspective off the bat.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. If the two of them are sitting side by side and they're both both of them the start date is on Monday, I'm going with the long-term employment. Because mid-sized companies are mid-sized companies. It is what it is. Big name companies go through. Craig Clark is a really good example. He worked for AT&T for 27 years. My heart goes out to this man because he rode that bucking bronco for a long, long time. And now that AT&T is doing whatever it is they're doing, Craig all of a sudden is no longer of value to them. And after 27 years, thanks a lot, pal. And honest to God, I would put my money on the compassion of a mid-sized company in a situation where they're under the gun well before I would put the same money on a big name company. AT&T, Comcast,
but what the key word that I think I heard you say there was compassion.
Correct.
So you're presupposing that every mid-sized company has compassion.
Well, no, I'm gambling more that they do than that they don't.
So the value. So if you were to make that choice, your choice would be based on which organization has greater compassion. Is that fair?
Or
that I feel has greater compassion.
That I believe based on my data has better,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think that's a false dichotomy, right? And so really you have to, often what we find is we're comparing apples and oranges or one against another.
Right.
And I like the Amazon process, right? So the Amazon says, hey, you're not competing against each other. You're competing against a standard.
Right.
We can take that same approach.
Right.
What is your standard? How does this opportunity meet your standard?
Yep.
Not how does this one compare to that one? Not that isn't some of the calculus that goes on in deciding between multiple offers, but my suspicion is this is a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Right. If you had two opportunities in front of you, you would have already made a decision. Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so not to evaluate or judge, because I don't know Gazwan's situation. I think it's important you establish an ideal or a standard first. That way, you know how every single opportunity meets or doesn't your standard.
True. No, it's a good point. And I'm being situational with this because, and I'm guessing you're right. I'm guessing it is a hypothetical, but hypothetically, I would still gamble on the mid-size thing, if nothing else, because what they're saying is, hey, come join us for a long time. The big name company is saying, okay, I've got a 6-month or a 12-month gig, may or may not go longer. Take your chances, right?
Right. Well, yeah. So we don't know the terms.
Right. Right.
of
So
the offer of employment.
yeah.
So
I mean,
the
just based
question
on
there is big over medium size, right?
yeah,
That's a decision. Temporary contract over permanent. I'm using air quotes, full time,
yeah,
because no position is permanent, or none of us would be here,
true.
right?
True.
Now I'm taking it from a different perspective. I've transitioned many times in my career, so but many of the people that come to this stream are here because of a reduction in force.
Or
And
some,
that's
yeah, some
typically
other
a
challenge.
thing
Yeah.
that happens
Yeah.
in larger companies as a way to balance the books.
Right.
Um,
And having gone through the exercise in a larger company and also in smaller companies, I can tell you, again, my own limited experience, just going through my life, I can tell you that, the calculus, to borrow a phrase, in a large company is, what Tom Godwin once called the cold equations, right? It's a very cold
yeah.
equation.
Well, and who was it that said that? It was Simon Sinek, actually. That's funny. He keeps coming up, right?
Yeah.
Is he places the blame squarely on business schools that were teaching in the 80s and 90s, this idea of balancing the books through reductions in force.
Right.
And he placed that blame squarely on people like, what was the guy from GE?
Jack Welch.
Jack Welch.
Yep.
Stacked ranking and bottom 10% every year. Goodbye.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And that leads me to be very apprehensive and not think very highly of things like PeopleSoft or HRIS systems that are designed to stack rank that way through a annual review process, because now I'm paranoid that because my manager maybe had a political bone to pick with me, that I'm now on the outside. Anyway.
Yeah.
I could go on and on my
that'd be a great conversation for a different venue. But I mean,
yeah.
Goodness gracious. I had a thought and it died of loneliness. Sorry.
That's all right. It is Friday.
Yeah.
It is cocktail hour. I'm sure you have one under the desk somewhere.
I don't actually. Not yet.
Yes. After the stream. After the stream.
Yes. No, I'm very conscientious about that, Andrew.
Good. Anybody else want to come on live and get some support? Have a question?
Yeah, please.
Like to make an observation? Companies are hiring, folks. I mean, I see it happening. The economy, to a certain extent, is attempting to recover. And so I guess the question I have for you, Terry, or at least open for discussion, is if you were to do a SWOT analysis just on the economy, right? Where are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats? And if you were to do that, how would you evaluate what's going on today?
Wow. Okay, everybody turn their tape recorders off.
It's going to be quiet for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Boy. Okay, so well, there's some really obvious things. The service industry in all its various forms got clobbered something fierce. The new whatever you call it, new normal, new model, new system, hospitality, travel, all that kind of stuff is going to change. It was already changed really radically, and I don't think it's changing back anytime real soon. That's a big chunk of change when you're talking about airlines and hotels and so on. They talked about one of the major 100-year-old hotels in New York City closing for good, right? That's a reimagining of a lot of things. I was having a conversation earlier today with a guy who was talking about how there's a re-emphasis on, or what he's seeing from a urban planning point of view, is a re-emphasis on neighborhoods, a re-emphasis on community within the neighborhood, and what can the neighborhood do to support itself in the context of larger urban environments. Really interesting conversation. Industries that will do very, very well during this whole thing are industries that, number one, pivot, but number two, add value in a crisis situation. In this particular crisis, the HVAC industry is going to be amazing because the vast majority of every building in America is going to have to be somehow redesigned to manage the spread of a microscopic organism that we've never dealt with before. Or if we have, we dealt with it in different ways that just don't apply. Okay. So HVAC and anything associated with HVAC is going to be a huge growth industry, as one example.
Yeah.
I think the service industry can see. Here's the interesting thing. Big hotels are suffering. The small boutiques are rip-roaring right now. Go figure.
Yeah.
Well,
the other thing I saw was this migration trend. I think I posted it yesterday or maybe this morning. I don't remember. That LinkedIn puts out, and they do biggest gains in net arrivals and steepest decline in net arrivals, which I thought was interesting. How whatever net arrival means. But I'm assuming they're taking that from the fact that people change their geography on their profile.
mm-hmm.
That's all I can assume.
Right.
Or perhaps they enter a role and experience that has a new geography on it. I'm not sure how they know these things, but
that's metadata, man.
Yeah, I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure they know better than me. But we could talk about that. I've got. I'll just put this up on the screen, and we can, kind of talk through this. But
yeah.
And it looks like Jacksonville, Florida, of all places. So if we're doing a SWOT analysis, why would Jacksonville fall under strong, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know what's there. What is drawing people to Jacksonville?
No idea.
These are things to think about. Well, I think what it's driving, and the real estate market is kind of reflecting this, is that people are looking for homes where they can have a work from home set up.
Mm-hmm.
They're moving to geographies because they're work from home. It's like, I don't have to work at home no more, or I don't have to work in an office anymore. The opposite, right? I can live wherever I want.
Yeah, I would assume that, places like Jacksonville, Salt Lake, I'm not as sure about, but places like Jacksonville, have probably not been high growth previously. And because of that, and in fact, I don't know this, but let's assume for a moment that Jacksonville, as an example, is a city that until very recently was seeing, net outbound, net decline, right? Well, guess what? That means you've got a lot of property standing, a lot of homes available potentially. Now, all of a sudden, that marketplace is soft because there's a lot of inventory, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that, but I'm just suggesting that if the inventory is soft and there is a corresponding opportunity for people to engage work in a different way, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go where there's inventory available and it's not as expensive, or that they can turn it around based on what they're able to sell for. Right?
Yeah. Good point.
So, you asked about sort of a SWOT analysis for the economy. The strength of the economy is, like I say, those industries that are going to be able to find opportunity in the midst of the crisis and do it in a way that's positive, that doesn't look like overt robber baron behavior.
Right. Which
calls into question Mr. Bezos and Amazon, but that's a whole other topic. Weakness in the economy, like we say, transportation, the supporting processes around sports. NBA is playing the finals right now. I know there are a lot of people watching remotely. Major League Baseball is playing, but they're not selling tickets.
Yeah.
They're not selling tickets. So guess what? Nobody's selling hot dogs. Nobody's selling Coca-Colas. Nobody's selling beer because nobody's going to those games. Yeah. So how do you take that and transfer it to the home environment? That's
a good question.
Yeah. So opportunities. How do you take what you used to do and evolve it into what you can do?
Yeah, I think it's like taking these virtual happy hours to the next level.
Yeah.
Now we're, so I remember back in this, I might be dating myself just a little bit, but back in the day before VCRs, you used to have watch parties with your friends to watch popular TV shows.
Right.
Like Friends or ER or whatever it was. You would all get together and you'd have watch parties.
Oh
So
yeah.
I could see kind of reverting back to that, and people in your inner circle where you're okay being around each other,
Right.
given distancing and masking and all that. But I can imagine that people are going to do watch parties.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
could I create a place to do watch parties? Or anyway,
And
something to think about.
that's assuming that their technology will support without having buffering issues. And I say that for the benefit of Joe, who I know has just started his business in that space.
Good
Joe,
point.
I'm calling you.
Yeah.
But,
So, by the way, Joe had a question. Does anyone have connections at Intel in sales? I'm sure I do. I just don't know. You'd have to go to my profile. I think you can search my connections on LinkedIn. I believe we're connected, Joe. So if you know how to search connections of a person, I'm sure we could find some folks at Intel in sales. Intel Corporation. I'm just going to do a quick search and see how many people show up in sales. How about that? I'm sure there's plenty.
Oh yeah.
Sales. People in sales at Intel, 11,000 people. So
How many of them were first level connections with you?
let me see. Good question. First degree connection. I'm just taking in Portland, 23. So do I know somebody in Intel sales? Evidently. Yeah, I do. I came from sales. Come on. Sales and marketing. Anyway, Joe, the answer is yes. There's plenty of people here who know people at Intel in sales. And I'm sure Terry does too. So it's upon each one of us to be proactive in the process of finding the right connections in the right places.
Yeah.
Being reactive after a posting and then saying, hey, there's a job. And now my veiled ask is reactive and somewhat weird. It's almost like stalking. Anyway, so that's my perspective. Anything else you want to share, Terry? I think it's time to go get a cocktail.
Might be.
So.
Might be. It certainly is in Louisiana. I know that.
All right.
So for
Very
our
good.
East Coast, you're overdue.
Yeah. And Terry, we're harvesting next Tuesday.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you want to talk offline, we can get together on that.
Yeah, I'd love to.
All right. Take care.
Cool.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Career Happy Hour every Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. You're welcome to join us here. Come on live just like Terry did. This is a community. We're here to support each other. Get together on LinkedIn here. Look at all the people in the chat and cross-pollinate. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday for Career Happy Hour. Take care, everybody.